Hello, everyone. I'm Jack Fisher. Welcome to my world, and welcome to a very special Jack Quick Reacts. Because today is the day that X-Men fans have been waiting for so long. That's right. Today's the day that X-Men 97 dropped, and I got to tell you, I did not get any sleep the night before. I knew I was going to wake up extra early to check out this show, and as a lifelong X-Men fan, this was quite possibly one of the most anticipated things I've waited for since the first movie came out. And yeah, it was. I'll just come out and say it right now. It was so worth the wait. And there's a lot more I want to say about it, but just remember, none of this is scripted. I'm going to say it. I'm going to sound off. I'm going to stutter. It's also really early in the morning as I'm recording this, so expect me to just sound a little overly restless, but it's for the best possible reason, because I just finished watching the first two episodes of X-Men 97, and oh man, they were both so good. They were both so satisfying. I can't put into words how excited I am about the future of this show, the future of the X-Men at Marvel Studios. It's just one of those. This is going to be one of those days I think X-Men fans are going to remember for a long time now. If you remember when I first reacted to this news, I distinctly remember when I heard that this show was announced. I refused to believe it. I thought, oh, someone's got to be trolling. There's no way they're going to bring this show back. There's just no way Marvel would ever do something this awesome. But it took a while until I was able to confirm it multiple times. Like, oh my God, this is happening. It's really, really happening. And that was like almost 2-3 years ago. And I know the writer strike got in the way. I know a lot of other factors got in the way, but it's been a long time coming. But today, this morning, as I'm recording this, March 20th, 2024, it's here. X-Men 97 is here. The first two episodes are out, and I gotta say, it's almost like they never left. Beyond the fact that the animation looks gorgeous. I mean, I know a lot of even fans of the old show will say the fifth season definitely saw a decline in overall animated quality. But this show, you could tell they put some money, effort, and just everything necessary to make the show look as crisp and as polished as possible. Everything from the opening sequence to that iconic opening theme that I don't think I'm ever going to skip. It was just so perfect. You could definitely tell there was so much love and care put into every minute of this show, and but just looking good is like that's only part of that's an important part, sure. But what always makes what was going to make it great is how well it carried on the spirit and legacy of both the X-Men and the former show. And in that respect, these first two episodes have shown. Yeah, it's definitely a worthy and fitting continuation. The first episode, it kind of takes place. They mentioned there's a bit of a time skip. It's about a year since Xavier died, and there was an attempted assassination by Henry Peter Gyrick. He's been a part of this show since the first season, and Xavier is gone. But as far as the rest of the world knows, he's dead. So there is that bit of information that the team has to deal with. They know he's still alive, but for the rest of the world, he's dead, and that means the X-Men, they don't have their mentor, they don't have their teacher, they don't have their visionary. So how do they continue on without him? I mean, they've had to work without him before, but not like this. This is a very different situation, and this is kind of where the X-Men kind of have to step up in unexpected ways. And I gotta say, everyone's really seems to step up, but there were definitely a few standouts, especially in the first episode. If anyone stood out the most, it was probably Cyclops and Storm. Those two really, really stole the show in the first episode. Even without Xavier, you can definitely tell that there are some reservations. There are some, hesitations about what's about the future of the X-Men. It's not just that they have to work without Charles Xavier. I mean, as we saw in the trailer, Jean Grey's pregnant. So and she looks like she's very close to delivering. So that's another added complication because there's constant talk about throughout this show and the second episode about Cyclops and Jean leaving to raise their child, which, that's actually a plot that's kind of ripped right from the comics. That was an important deal for an important plot point for a while. But even with that lingering over the team, that doesn't stop them from going into battle and kicking ass like they haven't done, like haven't seen in a long, long time. And on that front, I actually got to say, after watching the first episode alone, you can really tell that the animation, the story, and the content overall, it's a little bit more. It's more mature. It's really, you can definitely tell they're not watering it down for Fox Kids. They'll say things like, they're not going to curse or anything, but Wolverine will say crap. You'll see Wolverine chug a beer, and it's definitely has been updated. It does kind of recognize that the audience is more mature. It's not a Saturday morning TV show. So this is definitely that maturity definitely works. I feel like it's a real improvement on how, because it makes the action a lot more visceral, especially in the first episode when they have to hunt down Master Mold and Bolivar Trask again. And the action in that first episode alone sets a great tone for this series. And if that's kind of what we're in for, then sign me up for however many more seasons they can put out. I know there's going to be a second, a third is mostly confirmed, but yeah, that one episode, even if you're not a huge X-Men, that first episode should definitely get you excited. But as for the plot, as for the actual plot points, that first episode is it does actually feels like it evolves directly from the series finale. Gyrich is in jail, but the Sentinels are still out there, and Sentinel technology is now suddenly in the hands of like the Friends of Humanity, who were sort of like the Omega bigots of the original series. And now they're back, and now they have Sentinel technology, and that is definitely cause for concern. And finding the source of that is that's what they're tasked with doing, and that of course leads them back to having to confront Gyrich again, who's now in prison. But even though his actions against Xavier it did get some sympathy from the public at large, it's still very, very tenuous, to say the least, especially as things play out in the second episode. But one thing that I did like about what they did with the first episode, it did kind of more lean into some of the more modern takes on the Sentinels, because like when the show debuted, Sentinels were kind of just like these big dumb robots. They didn't have much depth, even Master Mold, but there were the visuals in the first episode really showed that the Sentinels are a much bigger threat. They are not than previously thought. They feel like a lot more devious in terms of they're not just dumb robots. There's a growing. There seems they're evolving too, which that actually fits more in line with what's happened with the Sentinels in the comics over the past 5 years. So that certainly speaks to just a sort of an acknowledgement of how the X-Men and their enemies have changed. And fighting this, but seeing the X-Men fight Sentinels, seeing how they team up, and it was just so satisfying to see. And everyone kind of really did have a chance to shine. Everyone kind of had something to do. Jubilee had a little subplot with like the first New Mutant we really were introduced to is Roberto De Casa, aka Sunspot, and he was kind of like Jubilee was. He was kind of like our point of view character when things get going, and what happens with him kind of leads the X-Men into the mix. And from there, he kind of goes through a similar arc as Jubilee, in the sense that he knows he's a mutant, but he doesn't like showing it, and and there's definitely, you can definitely see the parallels here, where he says his parents don't know he's a mutant. He's kind of afraid to come out to them, which that's a feeling that even today a lot of people can relate to it, especially if you're in the LGBTQ community. It really is. Even though it's very similar to the messages we saw in the original series, the fact that it's still so relevant, that shows you that these issues, they still matter, and what the X-Men represent, that still matters a great deal. And And now that they're back, it kind of feels like they're really leaning into that angle just as much as they've always have. But there's definitely more personal. It definitely is more personal in some respects now. You can definitely tell that might be some budding romantic tension between Jubilee and Sunspot. That's something that was teased earlier after the show was announced. And also, it was also nice to see Morph actually got a chance to do a lot more in these first 2 episodes than he did in the first several seasons of the previous of the '90s show. He even seems to have he does have a more colorful and more he's still as colorful and playful as ever, but he does seem to be a bit more. He's more serious in this time around. Not just, but he does still, he does kind of mess with Wolverine a few times, and he does mess with Cyclops and pretty much everyone. But he also shows that he can use that. He's good in combat too. He'd actually made his presence felt especially in the second episode, more so than the first. But yeah, but if the first episode was probably the tone setter for this show, in the sense that it led perfectly into the next one. And the second episode is where we get Magneto entering the picture. And, Magneto is, he's still very similar to, he isn't completely reformed. Don't think for a second that when he shows up that, he's gone completely good and he's just going to, be just like Xavier in leading the X-Men. That's not his style. The second episode really sort of, it's a really good example of how Magneto, how he's affected the world in terms of how humans perceive him, but also it's how he's sort of evolved since that first season of the show. And the fact that it's weird because he's so calm and collected throughout the second episode, even though the X-Men do not trust him, and they have every reason not to trust him. And even though humanity does not trust him at all, even when he does objectively something that's objectively good, there's still quite a bit of reservation. Now, whether or not he's going to stay on this path, that remains to be seen. Magneto has never been consistent in terms of his allegiance and his how he's aligned. And that was the same in the '90s show, but it still persists here. But there's some new wrinkles to the mix here, simply because now we found out in the second episode, Charles Xavier essentially left in his will he left the X-Men and the Institute to Magneto. So that certainly rubs people like Cyclops the wrong way, but that definitely will complicate things in terms of how they operate. But Magneto definitely. What really made what I thought this made the second episode so relevant was essentially the United Nations. They try to put Magneto on trial, and they try to essentially judge him for all the bad that he's done. And it's weird too, because Magneto, even though they shackled him, they put a power dampening collar on him, at no point did he look like he was not in control of the situation. So he really has a poise in that second episode that leads you to believe there's going to be more. He's not going to be on one side or the other, but he definitely made his point. I won't spoil everything that he did, but he definitely what he said is as relevant today as it was when this show first began, and it's relevant in ways that kind of transcend what mutants represent. And I think that really is sort of the heart of the show. One of the things, part of the reason why the show appealed in the first place, when it debuted, was it didn't shy away from the fact that mutants represent outcasts. They represent people who have been oppressed. They represent people who have been hurt, and people who are just born different. That really is the key here, and that the sense that they are born different does kind of factor into some other subplots. There's some in the second episode. Yes, there's a plot set up with Storm that I don't want to spoil entirely, but Storm is definitely going to have to go on a bit of a personal arc and a personal journey here. And we already knew from the episode listing that there's going to be a few Storm-centered episodes later on this season, and But what she does in the second episode really kind of helps set the stage for that. And but yeah, what's going to happen with her, that kind of remains to be seen. And there's also the second episode also has the added tension of that's when Jean goes into labor. Yeah, it didn't take long for she started the series. She starts this new series pregnant, and she already in the second episode she goes into labor, and that in and of itself leads to some interesting upheavals, especially when she has to deal with a bigoted doctor, which they have to improvise. But I will say this about that subplot: if you've read some of the plot leaks, or if you've kind of that have come out about the show, you kind of know where that's heading. But what I really liked about that point was was that her being pregnant, her having a kid, them being a family, that's always sort of been I say, okay, well, we're going to have this family. Can we still be in the X-Men while we're raising a child? And that was something that, going back to the season finale of the first season of the 90s show, I mean, that's something they talked about. I mean, what happens with when this child is born? If the child's a mutant, do we stay with the Xavier Institute that's always under attack, or do we try to live a normal life even though they're not normal? It really is a difficult dilemma that at one point Jean does confide in Storm about it, which is, I think, probably one of my favorite moments of these first two episodes. But it does. There are, again, there's a bit of a cliffhanger at the end of the second episode that kind of promises to complicate things even more. And even if you watch the opening sequence, you can see there's already a hint of where that's coming from. And I'm sure the third episode is going to make things even more dramatic for all the right ways. But there's also plenty of other. The one thing that I do like about another thing that's good in between the action, these first two episodes kind of carried on the spirit of the old animated show and of the old 90s show of not shying away from the soap opera elements. I know a lot of, if you look back at shows from that era, they tried to limit the whole romantic subplots and all that, but X-Men never shied away from that. Not in the 90s, and definitely not in this show. There's actually more romantic and dramatic subplots in these first two episodes than you'll get in most other animated shows, or just in most shows like this in general. They don't shy away. There's stuff going on with Rogue and Gambit. There's of course Cyclops and Jean have their family, and then Wolverine is still Wolverine. But one thing about but one other detail that's worth mentioning is in terms of enemies, at least for these first two episodes, their enemies are all humans, and humans are Sentinels. You don't see many, and there's no other. Wolverine mentions Apocalypse at one point, but you don't see Apocalypse. You don't see Sinister. You don't see a whole lot of other of the X-Men's, of some of the X-Men's villains. They don't have, like, the Brood doesn't show up. Neither does So I do like the fact that they're kind of keeping the enemy list for the X-Men as grounded in the sense. And I think that's definitely going to change. We already know Sinister is going to be a factor later on in this series, probably in the next episode, given how the second one ended. But it's got me very, very excited about what's to come. And one other thing I do want to touch on is the voice cast for this. It definitely works. There are some returning voices. Cal Dodd as Wolverine. It feels like he really hasn't missed a beat. He still sounds like Wolverine as much as ever. Lenore Zahn as Rogue is just perfect. When trust me, in the second when she says sugar, oh, you know a lot of '90s kids are going to get giddy. And there are some newcomers. They did have to change. Ray, because after the death of Norm Spencer, Ray Chase is now Cyclops, and he definitely has Norm's mannerisms and the way the way he sort of captures, the fact that Cyclops, he's both a leader, but he can be a little uptight. That he captures that perfectly. And Jennifer Hale as Jean Grey, that kind of, no offense to Catherine Disher, but that kind of feels like a bit of an upgrade. She really, there was definitely more of an emotive undertone to Jean. And no, by the way, no, she didn't faint at any point in these first 2 episodes. So if you were worried about that, you don't have to. Yeah, that didn't happen. But I think but the one voice that I think impressed me the most was Matthew Watterson's Magneto. He really kind of captured he really felt like he captured the grandiose nature of Magneto's tone. He's always been sort of like the kind of, he's in almost every episode he was in the original series. He always sort of stole the show with his presence. He was always a lot more like theatrical with his tone and his word choice. That's definitely here too. Matthew Watterson, I think he captured that, but he also kind of there's more of an there's a bit more of a seriousness. Like I think it's like a confident seriousness to Magneto here, because he knows now, he's basically carrying on Xavier's legacy, and he's in a position to do more than Xavier, and that for better and for worse. So it is going to be he's going to definitely be a character interesting to watch, but I do think in terms of voice casting, Matthew Watterson really, he really got it right. And there's plenty of others. There's plenty more I could talk about, but yeah, these first 2 episodes really set a solid tone in terms of what to expect. It set it set up plots within the X-Men. It set up romantic subplots. It set up personal arcs, especially with Storm. It set up just how it also kind of reaffirmed, some of these characters, they're still who they've always been. Wolverine is still Wolverine. He's still going to be crotchety and grumpy, but he's still going to do the right thing when he needs to. And there's certainly going to be plenty more room for other characters to grow. I mean, I look forward to seeing what happens with Morph. He was very versatile throughout the first 2 episodes, and I really liked what Sunspot brought when he showed up in the first episode, and hopefully we see more of him moving forward. But there's a whole lot more to there's a whole lot to look forward to. The only if there's any downside, it's that we're only going to get 10 episodes, and who knows how long we're going to have to wait for the next season. But we waited so long for this, and it was just so worth it. And I couldn't be more happy with how it's turned out. I can't wait for the next episode. I'll certainly be anxious to respond to that one as well. But this is definitely going to be a day that X-Men fans remember for a long time. It's definitely going to be a good day for Marvel Studios. So I really enjoyed this. I look forward to seeing more, and I will certainly be. I've also got even after these. I already have a few theories working around in my head, speculation that might not just what's going to happen in the next episode, but what might happen over the course of the season and what might happen into future seasons. I'm sure plenty of other fans are already starting to contemplate where that's going to lead. So I guess we'll have to wait and see. Another episode's coming. We got more episodes to come. I'm looking forward to it. I'm sure plenty of other X-Men fans are looking forward to it, but I'm I couldn't be more happy with with how it's started. So thanks a lot, everyone. This has been another edition of Jack Quick Reacts. So stay tuned for more. And until next time, everyone, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and take care and stay safe.